Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our FD seminar. My name is Danny Parker. I'm an audit partner here at Cooper Parry. We've got a lot lined up for you today. We're going to start with a talk from Mark Berryford-Smith from HSBC, who's going to give us an economic update. After Mark has spoken, we're going to have a quick Q&A with Mark because he needs to get off to another appointment. Then we've got a range of other speakers for you, covering a number of topics, R&D, an accounting update, tax, as you'd probably expect after the recent budget, wealth management and corporate finance as well. So lots to get your head around and hopefully a lot of useful information. We'll have a break at about 11 o'clock for half an hour to stretch your legs, top up your drinks. If you get back for 11:30, that'd be great so that we can crack on with the rest of the presentations. We're aiming to finish about 12:10, 12:15, so that it'll give us 15 or 20 minutes for a Q&A session. After which we'll have lunch out in the pantry where you were this morning, with lunch and drinks provided. If you could stay for lunch, that would be fantastic. If you can't, you have to get off. Of course, that's perfectly fine as well.
I'm Chris. I am a partner here and I head up the CP innovation team for those of you that don't know me. I'll start with a why hokey cokey. There's been an awful lot of changes over the last few months in relation to innovation. I'm going to largely be focusing on R&D today, because that's obviously a large part of what we do. A lot of the things that were announced last week in the budget were things that were just confirming what we already knew from the autumn statement. But given that was only 4 months ago, we've seen an awful lot of movement, and I'm not going to do the dance. We've had rate changes, date changes, and House of Lords inquiry, which we were referenced in, which was nice, for good reasons, not bad. And which ultimately concluded that the measures that were being brought in by the government to tackle abuse within the R&D industry weren't really going to work. The government's answer to that, we're going to plough on and do them anyway. And we've got legislation that's coming in 9 days' time, or changes that are coming in 9 days' time that can't, because they've been moved and changed so quickly, we haven't got the legislation. And so that's going to come in probably not even until 24. And so a very dynamic marketplace for us to operate in. So what I'm going to cover today is some of those new rates and rules for R&D incentives. It's doing that thing. A new category, new, very much in inverted commas, of R&D claimant that they announced last week. And then the new additional information form, which is handing on a sour note. So apologies if that's a bit small, I think they do get sent round afterwards. And so we'll start with the rates. And so for the rates, this one changes as of the 1st of April. So this is for expenditure after 9 days' time. And we've got a lot of changes. I'll leave that alone, hopefully it won't move. But this was doing this all last time, and I told you it wasn't going to happen again. I just hope I know my numbers, don't I? So for SMEs, profit makers, there's been a very big drastic reduction from the 130% super deduction down to, I'm just going to bloody ignore it. So 130 down to 86. For the mathematicians amongst you, know that that's a 44% difference. It's actually a 34% reduction. I've got 34% reduction on there, and then some smart ass yesterday said, oh, that's 44. Yeah, it's a 34% reduction to the 130. So that's a big loss. However, the corporation tax rate's going up, isn't it? From 19 to 25. So the vast majority of that loss is actually mitigated by the tax rate going up. So from 24.7 for profit makers, we're down to 21.5. So yes, it's a 13% reduction, but it's not as bad as it first appears when you look at the actual super deduction reduction of itself. The worst news is for loss-making SMEs, because Not only have we got the 86% down from 130, we have the tax credit rate going from 14.5 down to 10. I've got the calculation on there, but essentially we're going from 33.35 down to 18.6. That's a huge reduction for the loss-making SMEs. So that is not good news at all from 9 days' time onwards. For large companies, much better news. The 13% RDEX going up to 20, so 30% taxed at 19 versus 20% taxed at 25. There's actually a 42% increase to 15% benefit for RDEX. So good news for large companies. That also touches the SMEs, of course, where you are doing work on behalf of large companies, and SMEs that are doing work on behalf of large companies claim under the large company scheme. New category claimant, we'll come on to that for later slides. I don't believe it anymore. I've lost all faith. So we'll do it on here. Down on page or page.
It's literally clear.
So, rate changes, absolute date. Guess what? Yeah. My lack of faith, well founded.
That's bizarre.
And that's me at weekends. So on to the rule changes. Now, a lot of you, especially if you were here for the last FD seminar, you'll know we went through some of these rule changes. So I'm just going to focus on the things that have changed from last time. So things like the cloud cost, data cost being added on, yeah, they're still there, they were confirmed. One of the things that they mentioned about changing last time was the overseas. They don't like overseas costs being included in R&D claims, and so they effectively stripped them all out. And that was going to be for accounting periods, and this is one difference, it's for accounting periods beginning on or after the 1st of April. You've got a March year end, this isn't until March 24, December year end, this isn't until December 24. Yeah. Effectively, they're stripping it out, don't like it. There's been a lot of uproar. They did consultations after they announced the changes, and then actually did listen on this one, and so they pushed that out a full year. And so December year end, that now doesn't hit you until December 25. So that's one of the changes for this. All of this stuff we've already looked at in terms of tackling abuse and what they're now going to be asking you to do. So I'll come back to that when we get to the additional information form at the end. One thing they have mentioned, and it's been mooted a lot, and they kept their options open last week without announcing a great deal, was a merger of the two schemes. Ultimately, inspectors, the poor things, especially the 100 new ones, having to learn two different sets of rules is too much, and so they are looking to merge the schemes from 24 onwards. It will be the RDEX scheme that they would go towards, so there will be no tax saving scheme going forward. Everything will be above the line, and it will be in the form of an RDEC. Whether they have different rates of RDEC for SMEs versus large, not been announced yet. We're hoping so, to give a bit of a break to the SMEs. The one thing they did announce last week, which is again another one of these okey-dokey things, is a new R&D claimant. Because what they realised is we want to not kill those kind of earlier stage SMEs too much, sorry. And so going from 33.35 down to 80.6 is too much. So essentially all they've done, and so what they didn't announce last week was something they'd already announced in the autumn statement, i.e. that massive reduction. What they did announce was this, new rate for claimants, R&D intensive companies, and it's going to be at 27%. Well, 27% in my book's less than the 33.35 they're getting right now. Yes, it's better than the 18.6, but it's not particularly good news, is it? And so there is this new 27%. Where it comes from is it's still the 86% super deduction, but they're keeping the 14.5% tax credit rate rather than coming down to 10. I think 26.97 that comes out at. The kicker is it's for R&D intensive companies. R&D intensive has been defined as you spend 40% plus of your total expenditure on R&D. Great for the tech companies, great for the pharma companies, the odd IT company. In 23 years of doing this, I'm not finding an awful lot of Midlands-based engineering and manufacturing companies who are spending 40% of their total spend on R&D. So, unfortunately, the loss-making engineering and manufacturing companies, you're probably looking at the 18.6. So, good news for our THG colleagues down in London, where they're taking high growth. So, startups, helping them to kind of reap next year before dying. That's probably what that's aimed at, the earlier stage companies in those specific sectors. The practical reality, yeah, we covered that. Groups is the other one. Oh, well, why don't we just shove all of our R&D that's being done across the group into one company? Yeah, they've thought about that. They're going to look at it on an aggregated basis for your group, so don't bother, you're stuffed. And this is the draft legislation thing. This is coming in 9 days' time. There is no legislation. We haven't even got draft legislation. So what they're expecting these companies to do is you put in your 18.6% claim now. Sometime next year, if you're still around, we might top you up to the 27. Well thought out, and yeah, this is how quickly it's moving and what we're having to deal with. Next one, please. So the final couple of slides for me is the additional information form. This is the kind of the worst news that came out last week. They are trying to clamp down on sort of, I guess, some consistency across the market. There's a lot of chat about the R&D industry being pretty poor. What can we do? Let's try and introduce some consistency. And so from August, another date, from the 1st of August, any claim that is submitted after that date, nothing about year ends, nothing about accounting periods, any claim submitted after that date, they want you to provide online form, all of this information. Now, any of you who do R&D claims already, and certainly any of you that do claims with us, you'll recognise that we've started to put some of this stuff on already. So one of the main changes on this first slide is about the 5 headings for the descriptions of the projects. The 2 extra things, you've always had to do advancing science and technology, you've always had to do uncertainties, and how did you overcome them? They're fairly standard. The first two in terms of actually naming the field of science and technology and baseline, those being quite prescribed now in terms of telling them what the baseline was, because that's the bit, gives the inspector a bit of context as to what you're about to tell them. And what they're doing with this kind of stuff, agent, contact users of the agent. They kind of know that there's some pretty poor R&D advisors, boutiques out there. If they get a couple of claims from a poor advisor, they go, oh, these are a bit ropey. What else have they sent us? At the moment, they don't know, because they've not got the data. They will do post-August, and hopefully we'll start to see more. We'll start to see some exits from the market with the increased HMRC inquiries that we've seen. We've looked at some notable people have exited already. Hopefully, the likes of us, we'll start to see more. Next one, last one.
Be afraid for nothing.
This is the real killer. Anybody that had this claim done by us, you'll know that we generally, it's more about a methodology in terms of describing how we've come to the numbers we have and giving a single, sometimes second example of the sorts of things that qualify. So we tend to write up 1 or 2 projects. We haven't got a choice anymore. There will be more to do. And shed loads more, potentially. So if you do 1 to 3 projects, you're telling them about all of them. 4 to 10, they want 50% coverage, minimum of 3. 10 plus, same again. And if you've got a load of small ones, you're writing about your biggest 10. You're doing full write-ups on 10 different projects, compared to, at the moment, for some of these, we're doing 1 or 2. That's nasty. And that's coming in August. Planning for it. Guess what you should all do? I'd be getting in as many years as I can. We operate fairly swiftly. December 22, we're doing that already. But we know some companies, some advisors out there are a year behind, 2 years behind in terms of the years that you're looking at. Kick them hard and a lot, because you want to get them in before August if you don't want to be doing a lot of extra work compared to what you're doing now. So there's a definite planning point there. And that's me. Next up is Adele. She's going to be covering the budget from last week from a wider tax perspective. So over to Adele.